BS-Free Witchcraft is a production of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Nerd and Tie produces podcasts ranging from actual play to true crime, and you can find more at nerdandtie.com or join our Discord by going to nerdandtie.com/Discord.
She's right. The number one rule of the craft: if a person is a danger to herself or others, they will be bound.
I was starting to get a little worried.
Sorry, I was just hanging out with my friends.
We've gone too far.
Was this just like some game to you?
Oh, no.
I feel different.
Be careful. A lot of weirdos out here.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Welcome to BS-Free Witchcraft, your monthly guide to the modern witchcraft movement, minus a lot of the usual, well, bullshit. I'm your host, Trey Dorn. It is November, and we are going to be talking about a movie this episode. As many of you recall, a few months ago on the show, I talked with Bree NicGarran about The Craft, the 1996 teenage modern urban fantasy horror movie. That genres are difficult to pin down in my mind, but I have thoughts. Anyways, that was one of the most important films in the modern witchcraft movement, and I don't think I'm overstating it. Everybody, like, at least it made major waves. Everyone was talking about it. Like, everyone. If you were a witch in the 90s, you talked about The Craft. It was... Not everybody liked it, but you talked about it. And it definitely influenced an entire generation of witches to the point where I'm still seeing screenshots from that film as aesthetic posts on Tumblr. So, this year, in October, a sequel came out. The Craft Legacy. Sequel/remake. It's complicated. And joining me this episode to talk about that sequel is, again, Hex Positive's Bree NicGarran. And so if this, we're going to talk for a couple of minutes without any spoilers, and then we're going to jump into spoiler territory. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, be aware that when we jump into spoilers, we're just gonna spoil the crap out of this whole movie. All right, so if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, when we get to that point, and we'll tell you when we're gonna start talking spoilers, you stop listening to the show. I guess the movie is available on demand. I bought it. Whoa, no, don't play the trailer. I have my TV on still. I just rewatched the movie literally right before talking to Bree this morning. I bought it because I'm crazy, but I think it's like $15 or $20 to rent the movie right now. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's
I also bought it, so
yeah. Well, so I did it on Vudu, and Vudu, it was like, I think it was like $20 to rent it, $25 to own it, or $30 to buy it and the 1996 The Craft as a bundle.
Oh, jeez.
Because I did this on Halloween weekend, because this is my wife and I watched both the... Well, it's my wife hadn't seen The Craft, the first one, in years. So, because I only watched it for the first time earlier this year, but she had seen it years before, which is ironic that I'm the one who's the witch. I'm the witch from the 90s. Like, I've been a witch since the 90s, and I hadn't seen it until this year. But now I've seen the first Craft 3 times, because we watched, my wife and I watched the first Craft right before watching The Craft Legacy, or as the title is, Blumhouse's The Craft Legacy. God damn it. It's good. Anyways, it's so yeah, I've watched it twice now. Bree just watched it once the night before we're recording this. Obviously, this episode is coming out in late November for most people, a week early if you were a Patreon subscriber of mine, patreon.com/TRAGEORN. Patreon subscribers got this at least a week early, but we were recording this. We're recording this like November 7th. So just remember back to the beginning of November and everybody's mental state, and just keep that in mind.
I will say I'm a lot more optimistic today than I was earlier this week.
Everything we say is going to be dated by the time this episode comes out, so let's not talk in any direction regarding the events of this week, because, yeah. All right. So, The Craft. Also, The Craft Legacy. So this movie was marketed. So you and I actually briefly talked about this film before it came out, during the while we were recording for the October episode where you were also a guest, and I think I shared some thoughts there, and I think let's drop in that conversation now.
It looks like a direct sequel.
Well, it looks to me like they're doing that thing you do where you do effectively a remake, but you say that the original's in continuity. Which is not uncommon, and it means that, like, yes, this is an independent film that you can watch on its own, but it's while it's a remake, it is saying that thing you already watched in this continuity. Like, that's why all the characters have new names, and while they're not, it's not an exact one for one on what's happening.
Yeah.
It
looks like they're telling the same basic story, just with like different events, different plot points.
Yeah,
I'm very much here for it. I'm very interested to see, with the changes to the casting and the changes to the storyline and maybe some updates that they've made, how much they're going to mirror the old one versus bringing in new information. Oh, I'm so stoked.
I mean, it's when they had like what appears to be the point of view characters say the Nancy line. I was like, okay,
that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. But I'm also wondering, I felt like the editing around that was more sloppy. I'm like, you watch that, like you watch the trailer for the original Craft, and it's like, it's just tight on like the reaction, like to the guy saying something, like the we are the weirdos. Like, it's just like, it felt more natural in the original. So I'm hoping that the editing is tighter on in context than it was in the trailer. 'Cause I'm just like, that felt like we were pausing for a second, so all of the fans of the first Craft movie could all start paying attention to hear the line. I'm like, I really worry about that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. The trailers aren't edited by the people who edit the film.
Correct.
So, I know I'm going to be disappointed with the soundtrack.
Oh, I know, because nothing could ever like beat the first movie for soundtrack.
Right. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm excited for this film, but I'm worried about this film.
It's got a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it does. And like, well, here's the thing. It's so and maybe I'll use this because technically I'm still recording. Because neither one of us has seen the movie yet. So it's actually a really good, like, it's no matter what, this film is not going to be as culturally important as the first one, because the first one's cultural importance came from when it hit, and like the exact subject matter, the exact kind of film on that subject matter at the exact right time. You know what I mean? Like, it's the original Craft, like at that point in the mid 90s, with that point we had just hit enough Witchcraft where books were available in every major bookstore on it. Like Witchcraft had gotten the modern Witchcraft movie had gotten big enough where that information was available generally, so people who went out and saw the movie could then access the stuff to look it up. Like, and so that's like that pop culture moment combined with the growing, like, that exact moment of thing. Like, it's now, like, we live in a world where the modern Witchcraft movement is big enough where it's already just kind of part of the atmosphere for a lot of people. Like, the fact that like communities like Witch Blur exist.
Yeah.
Like it, and the number of discords that are out there, and like the number of conversations and the number of books, like, and the amount of stuff, and just kind of the general like permeation, and the fact that The Craft as a film has been out for, you know, about 25 years, is like all of these things. Like it's kind of a situation where it won't be the same. So like, even if this could be a better movie, like obviously we haven't seen it yet, this could be a better movie, but even if it is, it's not going to be as culturally important of a film.
It's not going to hit the same. Yeah.
No, it's this film is, so that's why I was like, we talked about this on the Nerd and Tie podcast, like when they first announced the sequel, and I don't even remember how long ago when they announced that this movie was going to go into development was, but I know that First Stirs was still on the network. It's still on the show. So he left in 2016.
Yeah, it was stuck in development hell for a good while.
Yeah, so it's like, I know I'm gonna search the Nerd and Tie website. I'm gonna search for the first mention, because I know. So it was at least no, that's the BS for Witchcraft episode. I don't need that. So May 2015 is
sounds
when
about
at least
right.
we first reported. Yeah, it's May 2015. I believe my headline was "Sony is remaking The Craft because the gods have given up on mankind." So between 2014 and like 2017, I think we maintained a pop culture blog on Nerd and Tie. Because right now we still have a news section for like convention news on that website. It's kind of the artifact, because, you know, Nerd and Tie, the main Nerd and Tie podcast started out as a pop culture and convention news show, like, and that podcast is still on the Nerd and Tie network. We had a pop culture and convention news blog, and now we just dropped down to convention news because nobody was reading the pop culture blog. And it was like, imagine if the most work you had to do for a website was the only thing that nobody cared about on a website.
Oh, jeez.
So that's why we just were like, okay, everyone wants this stuff we're making. No one wants this stuff we're making. And the stuff that nobody wants is the thing that's taking up all of our time. So we just stopped doing it. We closed it and pivoted. It's like the Craft is like, it's that Craft remake, to get away from that tangent. Like, yeah, it's been 5 years in the making for that movie. And when it was first announced, I was like, who needs this? Like, I mean, to be fair, I hadn't actually seen The Craft at that point. I just had strong opinions on it.
As I recall.
But also, like, and I still thought, like, with the who needs this, because part of the reason why The Craft is considered a classic is not as much to do with necessarily the content of the film, but the importance of the film. And, like, and having seen it, like, knowing that this remake sequel, like, that this sequel was / remake was coming, like, part of the thought was, like, even having seen the movie, I'm like, do we need this? Because the first movie stands as a complete story on its own. Not everything needs to be remade or rebooted. Like, it's sometimes something is just fine leaving it.
Yeah, but it's Hollywood. I mean, it's adapt or die. You have to have something that's like in an existing franchise in order for people to even like look at it. So it's like, I get that they're capitalizing on the current
I feel like
permeation of witchcraft in the community, but it's still like,
this is Blumhouse making it. They're very good at making profitable horror films that don't have to be in a franchise. Like, horror is, I think, the one place you can go where you don't. I mean, there are plenty of franchises in the horror world, don't get me wrong, but it's the one place you can still go where you can have a very successful, profitable movie, because the margins are different there than in like the blockbuster world.
Yeah, very true. I'm still excited for it.
I am too.
I'm super stoked for it. Like, I've seen the trailer like 4 or 5 times at this point, and it seems like a good sort of a real nice modern, hopefully with modern takes. Witchy movie with a nice autumnal sort of feel to it. I like the look of the core four that we're going to be following throughout the movie. I
Yeah.
like that they had that little Polaroid of Nancy. I'm intrigued to see how that fits in, and it's like, this all looks really good. This all looks good. It's a solid concept. I want to see what they do with it.
I'm gonna go with the Polaroid of Nancy is more of an Easter egg that has very little to do with the central plot.
Possibly.
It's
very possibly.
That my thought is it's like the Polaroid of Nancy is to acknowledge that we're in the same world as the original craft, and that it will bear like some like she's gonna like pick up the book that Nancy had in the first movie.
That's what I'm thinking.
And the Polaroid's just in it because they're just going to assume people keep Polaroids of themselves in their books. It's
also like it's a nice callback to like Sarah's picture of her mother from the first one, so that's got me thinking, is there more of a connection? But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to imply that this is actually Nancy's daughter?
I don't think it would be that obvious.
I don't know.
I mean, it could be. It seems like it would be a bit heavy-handed.
It calls back to Sarah's picture of her mother. Is it going to turn out the main character's adopted and is Nancy's daughter?
That was my initial reaction to seeing the Polaroid. Actually, is this Nancy's kid who was adopted by another family?
But also, and here's my wild fan theory now that going into this that would explain why that's the character who mirrors Nancy's line.
Exactly.
Oh boy. So now if I use this at all, we're going to cut to having seen the film.
Yes.
So in a few seconds we'll find out how right or wrong my random theory was. That was before we saw the movie.
And now,
like, so this movie marketed itself as a remake and sequel.
Yes.
First off, that trailer was full of lies. But
God,
we'll wait till the spoiler section to fully dig into that. It's not inaccurately advertising the film you get. So like, I don't want to be too critical, but
it's very obvious that they made the trailer before extensive edits and probably some rewrites were done
or reshoots, and because there are specific notable. There's certain things in the trailer that I was 100% were like when I saw the trailer, I was like, that's not going to be in the movie. That's 100% for the trailer, and that's the Polaroid of Nancy.
That was too easy.
But like. If you're wondering, hey, that delivery of the "We are the weirdos," "We are the weirdos, mister," like the delivery of that line, you're saying, wow, that seemed really out of place and wooden in delivery. Don't worry, that is not in the movie. That line is said in the movie in a completely different context,
which I liked much better,
by a different character. So, let's just general thoughts on this thing. First off, I think it succeeds as a sequel but fails as a remake.
I agree.
So if you haven't watched this film yet, I highly recommend, and you haven't seen the original The Craft, I highly recommend seeing the 1996 movie first, because there's a lot of stuff that's not explained in this movie that is explained in the first movie. And so if you've seen the first movie, you go, oh, okay, they're doing that. Like and it makes sense as a story. But if you are watching this movie on its own and don't have that context, I think it's thin. I enjoyed the movie. I want to be clear. Like, in this episode, we're going to be really nitpicky, and I have extensive notes, and Bree has many thoughts as well.
I have opinions. Oh boy.
But I want to be clear. Overall, we both enjoyed this movie. If I believe the assessment.
But I mean, like, the overall feeling, and I think we both agreed on this, like, when we were watching the trailer, it's like, this is not going to be a movie that is for us as, people who were teenagers or so when the first movie came out. It's like, this is very clearly marketed for people who are teenagers now. And I think in that context, it's a good movie. Like, 8th grade me would have been absolutely bonkers for this. I would have freaking loved it. I would have watched it a million times.
First off, my biggest thing is this movie's incredibly well cast.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. I love the casting. There was no one in the cast that seemed out of place or awkward. The acting was amazing.
Yeah, it's the cast is super, and frankly, like, I just want to say they did an amazing job casting people who actually looked like teenagers. Because that's one of the biggest faults, I think, of the 1996 The Craft, which was just a problem with Hollywood in general in the 90s and 2000s, is that because I was a teenager, I was the age of the characters in the movie when it came out, roughly. You know, those people did not look like the people I was going to high school with, but no movie teenagers looked like the people I was going to high school with. So, I mean, like, Robin Tunney was in her late 20s, maybe. Like, I think she was like 28 in that movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they got the fashion right, they got like a lot right, but these are clearly adult human beings.
Yeah.
Now, it is a little weird in a couple of... I always feel uncomfortable as, you know, especially someone who's now 40, watching scenes of teenagers making out. It is good to know that the lead is like 23, so she was probably about 21 or 22 when they shot this. So it's not like it's... There's a lot more masturbation in this movie. Just 100% more masturbation. Well, it's just like, I mean, it's good to acknowledge that it happens,
but at the same time, it's like, did that need to be a plot point?
Well, and we'll get into one of those.
Yeah.
The other one at least like fit into the story. The one of those we'll get into. Overall, like, if you're a savvy movie viewer and you're used to looking for every like little like clue on screen for what's happening with the plot, this movie will get you excited for plot threads that never happen.
Yeah, that's about where I landed, because I was like, ooh, like taking notes in my head. Okay, so this might happen or this might happen, and then at the end it was just kind of like, okay.
Like, oh, I'm looking far too much. I'm probably looking more into the set design than the set designer did.
Yeah.
So there's like, I don't know. Like, it's really frustrating in many ways, but we'll get into that in the spoiler portion where we're going to dissect this whole movie. There is, I don't think it's a spoiler, but there is a weird ass window transition with opera that is weird.
Yeah, that made like no sense. I'm like, okay, so is there like music playing inside the house, or wait, no, okay.
No, the music is playing inside the house.
Just very quietly.
Yeah. There's this, so this is just a weird editing choice that makes no sense in the editing of film. That there is, so this is not a spoiler. This is early in the movie. There is a shot of a window and they go from day to night, but like there's just this weird like sudden jump cut with opera blasting and like
dramatic opera.
Yeah, like it makes like, and it's just sort of what? And
wait, are we in peril now? What
it's
happened?
So jarring, and it's just like, what movie is this shot from? Like, because it doesn't feel like this movie, and it doesn't feel like the rest of the movie. It's not like the movie's full with weird like stylistic cuts like that. It's just that one in the first like 20 minutes of the film, in the first 10 minutes of the film. Like,
yeah. I feel like maybe the director was making an artistic joke that nobody got.
Yeah, like
that's how it felt.
It's definitely not a reference to The Craft.
No, it doesn't seem to be a reference to anything, really. I mean, it's like, this is an artistic choice that we made, and it was like, okay, but it didn't land.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's weird. It's weird. So, like there's lots so like there are a lot of like things that are left on the table. Like this movie is 7 minutes shorter than the first movie. it's done at like, so the movie's like an hour 35, something like that. I will tell you that the credits start rolling at an hour 25. So this is not a long movie.
Yeah.
I feel like it should have been 15 minutes longer to establish certain things early on. So there's a lot of stuff that just feels unfulfilled. But so I think that, so to kind of end our little 5 minutes of no spoilers here, I feel like the end result is, this is a it's a fun film, but it is not as tight or as well structured a film as the first one by far.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I will say, though, I think the saving grace of this movie is overall the performances by the actors. Because, and this is, and I want to call this out, so just because Gideon Adlin as Frankie is just, she is acting the hell out of that role. Like,
yeah.
she is giving 110%, and I am there for it, because she took what was in that script and just gave the best performance. Like, yeah. All right, so let's so we're gonna go into spoilers now, because we've been having to cloak dialogue and not spoil things. So you've heard our pre-movie thoughts. You've heard our kind of our post-movie with avoiding spoilers. If you have not seen the movie and don't want to be spoiled, stop this podcast now. This is your mark. All right?
And then come back and listen when you have watched it and grieve with us.
Yes. All right, so the first thing I want to say is that I love the opening of this movie so much.
Oh my God, yes.
The opening shots.
It felt like a real good update of that little ritual bit from the first movie.
It's literally it is the opening of The Craft, but better. Like, because like, you see the opening, like the first movie, they're doing the ritual, and it's okay, what's the context for this? Who are these characters? Okay, they're just sort of doing it. So it gave me such hope going into this movie that we have these 3 characters who are acting like actual teenagers.
Yes.
Or at least as much as I can tell from my childless 40-year-old, who the only teenagers I've interacted with are like my cousins and niece and nephew, and don't really, they live states away, so it's like we're talking holidays.
Well, speaking as someone who was a teenage girl once, I can tell you it's pretty accurate. I can't speak for like the context of today, but it's like,
right?
Yeah, I
no,
remember
it's
being
so
like that.
I can't speak for the context of the day, but it felt like the teenagers that I knew when I was a teenager.
Yes.
So it's
yes.
I don't know if the slang is accurate or remotely accurate, but the attitude, and it was a much like. Also, you could tell that these are much more emotionally healthy people from that first opening.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The one thing is, this is a much more emotionally healthy set of 4 people than the 4 girls in the first movie. Yeah. And then we literally, like, they cut to the sky, and I'm like, so the reason why you cut to the sky in the first Craft is because Sarah's on a plane. The reason they cut to the sky in this movie is because this is how The Craft opened. So we're going to replicate that shot, because they are traveling by car. It's Lily and her mom are traveling by car.
With Alanis Morissette playing. I love that.
Yeah. I'll say musically, this is a very different film.
Yeah, but it having that little pop of, like, you know, that song came out around the same time as the first movie, so for me it put me right back kind of in that mindset, like, oh yeah, I remember the movie came out and this song was really popular, so the mindset was there.
It's the 90s. Do you remember Alanis Morissette? It's like it also, like, frankly, like, part of, like, the the movie nerd in me that says like, oh, but a callback song would have been better. And there's all of these like famous songs off of like the Craft had a really good soundtrack, and they could have like pulled a song off of that. But I'm also like, does that make sense as a song that like a mom would sing with her daughter like while driving?
No.
I'm like, I mean, some moms would, but it also like doesn't feel like a like happy sing along song, which is what they're trying to play with the contrast on that. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like it is my larger thought was like, they saved money because they did not use a lot of pop songs on this soundtrack. Like, because they use some, but a lot of the music was just like score.
Yeah.
Whereas the original Craft had score in key scenes, but also like was like, yeah, we'll just shove this love spit love song over this scene of Chris practicing football.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching a lot of Teen Wolf, so I almost said lacrosse instinctively, which is not the sport they were playing. But so like it's like so we meet David Duchovny's character Adam as the mom's moving in with her. What I assume is like they do, like, I do think to their credit they let the audience figure things out. They don't spell out for you that like the mom's been in a relationship with this guy for a while, but it's been long distance, and he's been at their house.
Yeah.
And in all likelihood, she's been here, but Lily hasn't.
Yes.
Like I feel like that was actually like that was a good the writer did a good job with that setup. Where like we're establishing that she has a pre-existing, like the relationship's pre-existing, that she has that Lily, the daughter Lily, the main character Lily, knows David Duchovny's character, and it isn't like walking into a stranger's house, but it plays up the awkward thing. And then
but they don't let it get too awkward, which I liked. It's like,
yeah.
oh, okay, this isn't just like they're gonna let it be weird and stilted for the sake of like establishing that it needs to be awkward. It's like, he makes an effort and like shows an interest in her camera because she takes a lot of Polaroid pictures. That's like her thing.
Yeah,
and
she's
I
a
liked
hipster.
it. I'm like, okay, this feels very normal and natural that you're meeting someone on their turf, like he says, for the first time. And
yeah,
even though they know each other, this is now a different dynamic, but he's still like making an effort to be welcoming. And as someone who is a big fan of the X-Files, I was like, hey. So
yeah, and the minute you see it's David Duchovny, you're like, oh shit, something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because he's the biggest name actor in this movie.
Yeah. Actually,
so
now that you mention it,
yeah,
you're
no,
right.
like he's like, I mean, he's the biggest established name on, like, I mean, some of the actors have like done work, but obviously like just the younger actors, even the ones who have done other stuff, just haven't been around as long. So David Duchovny's got like, one of the longest running science fiction programs ever made. Start on that,
Mm-hmm.
couple of movies, other successful shows like Californication, just David Duchovny. Like,
Yeah.
so that like in what is like a low budget horror film, that the biggest actor you're paying to be there is going to, like,
Something's going to go on with this guy. He's not a throwaway.
Something's happening. But I feel like it had been in ways they relied on the audience being savvy to that more than they should have.
Possibly.
Like, I was suspicious of his character more so because he was David Duchovny. at the start of the film than anything the film was telling me.
Yeah, I kind
until
of
we
went
get like 15
in,
minutes in. Then when we get 15 minutes in, then there's something that happens. But
yeah, I was kind of looking at it like, oh, okay, maybe having him there is yet another callback to the 90s, because again, same period in time, similar pop culture things happening. Oh, we have a song from the 90s. We now have an actor who was very popular at the same time. So I was just kind of viewing it as that and going, oh, okay, this is, they got someone to be this person in the movie as a callback to then. Yeah. And then, when they got into more of the family dynamic, I was like, okay, now I see. then the suspicion begins to grow.
Yeah, it's first off, like, so speaking of his family, why did we need 3 sons? Like, it's like
Yeah.
Isaiah is not a character.
No.
Like, Isaiah is literally not a
prop.
character. I honestly, like, I think I heard him say 3 lines in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Half the time I forgot he was there.
my wife got confused because she forgot that was supposed to be like one of the sons, and she kept getting like Isaiah and Timmy mixed up.
Yeah, I did too.
So
because they have like a similar haircut, and they're the same height.
Generic white guys.
Yes,
like
generic white teen number 2.
So the brothers, like, one of them isn't a character. He's a jump scare at one point, but he isn't a character.
And that jump scare made no sense.
No, it didn't.
I think they just stuck the jump scare in there so that Blumhouse could say that, yes, we made an attempt to be scary.
Right. No, it's that whole sleepwalking scene does nothing.
Made no sense.
It does nothing for the story. It was well shot. Like, it's well shot for a we want a creepy scene. Like, the way the camera pans over him in the corner, but the character hasn't noticed, but the audience can clearly see him standing by the door in shadow.
I really did like that.
Like, that
I was waiting for that
shot.
to be something more.
I was waiting for that to be like the ghost. I admit I spoiled the film for myself before I watched it, because I spoil movies for myself before I watch them a lot of the times.
I do that too.
Especially when I know I'm going to pick it apart. But like, I thought, like, but so like that, like the brief synopsis, like, was just basic plot point. So I didn't know. I was like, oh, is that going to be like the ghost of Timmy? Like, it's foreshadowing his death before it happens? No.
That's kind of what I thought. It was like, that's going to be the ghost of somebody.
Or it's going to be Tim, like, she cast a love spell, sort of, maybe.
Or so he's like standing there in the corner watching her sleep. I think I literally said out loud, oh God, please don't let him be standing there watching her sleep.
Right. It's just,
but no.
It's, this movie does that a lot. Like, this movie does that a lot. And so, like, the middle son, whose name, I've already forgotten his name. I've watched that movie, like, less than an hour ago. I've forgotten the other 2 brothers' names. I remember Isaiah's name because Timmy slept with Isaiah. Yeah. You know, like, I don't remember.
The middle was Jacob, was it? I don't remember.
Starts with the J. I know it starts with the J. So, the middle son, who is, like, there's an excuse for Timmy to stick around. The youngest son... What's up with that? Like, it feels like he's going to be important in the first half of the movie,
and then just vanishes.
And then just isn't. Yeah, and then he's just like around. Like, she kind of has this connecting conversation with him about like how she doesn't know her dad. Like, she never knew who her dad was, and it's good character establishment for Lily. But it feels like you're establishing him too, and then. And he wishes her good luck at the first day of school, and then...
Yeah, it seemed like they were going to have, like, a friendship or a connection of some kind, and then it's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Gone. Okay.
Yeah, like, it's, why are you here? It's...
Yeah.
Like, this movie, you could have, like, literally, like, dropped off the youngest son altogether.
And given his lines to the middle son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the oldest son is kind of necessary for Timmy's story to have been a different brother than the one he's best friends with, because he still needs to maintain that connection. But I don't know if that's necessary either. You can just not make the guy he hooked up with feel ashamed about it.
Yeah. Like, there's that.
You could just have a stepbrother.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and we're saying stepbrothers. They're not married in the film. They're not. We know, but it's easier to describe
sort
them
of
as
stepbrother.
Sort of stepbrother. Like, I think you could have like dropped it down to 1 or 2, like, and that would like, because what happens is that you give this emotional connection, character development to the youngest brother, who then has no impact on the plot, and the brothers who do have impact on the plot don't have any development.
Yeah. I think that a lack of character development was kind of a sin, like, across the board on some of the supporting characters. Like, we're talking about, like, the guy's sons, and we're talking about Timmy, and I know more about them than I know about any of the sister witches.
Oh yeah, we need to get into that. We definitely need to get into that. So we've got our 4 witches and I had to look up their names because they're barely said in the movie. They are barely said in the movie.
They drop them like once and that's it.
So it's like I knew Lily's name because she said like 1,000 times, the main character, who's our new Sarah / Nancy's daughter. Spoiler. She's played by Kaylee Spaney. I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but whatever. And then we've got Frankie, Gideon Adlon's character, who is, I think, probably... So the main 3, there is never a scene with just one of those 3 in the whole movie. It's
correct.
Those 3 are all together or not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that's the best way to describe them, as a single character.
Yeah, kind of.
Like,
yeah, the Coven as a character.
The Coven is a character. Like, it's because I mean, like, there's differences between them, you know. So you've got Gideon Adlon, and they make it like 3 lines about her being a Twilight stan. But then it's like, it's not like through that. But it was fine. It was a nice note. I thought the comment that Lily was giving off Edward Cullen vibes was funny.
Yes.
Because I was like, yeah, no. She does dress like she's from 100 years ago.
Yeah, the coat was egregious.
It's very realistic. Like, I have seen this. Like, there's this like weird. My wife made a comment, like, we were watching some show like 2 years ago. Like, I can't tell if this is a period piece or not. Like, it's not a period piece. The kids are doing this. This is just what they're wearing. We're just old and it's fine.
Yes, and remember, we all dressed kind of weird when we were teenagers because we were discovering ourselves. So I put some of it down to that, but still.
I mean, I was a teenager in the 90s. I wore baggy jeans, flannels, and t-shirts, sometimes with Wolverine on them.
Yeah, that actually sounds pretty similar to what I was wearing.
Yeah, it's band t-shirts and comic book t-shirts because I was a nerd, and then large oversized flannels. Mm-hmm. And then jeans that did not do any favors for my ass. And Converse All-Stars.
About right. Actually, I'm wearing a flannel today in honor.
I still own some flannels. I have some nice flannels, but I usually stick with the cardigans these days. But I have flannels.
Yes.
Still.
So the Coven.
Yeah, the Coven. So we've got Frankie, who is probably the most developed out of those 3. We have Tabby, who's played by Lovie Simone, who is black. Mm-hmm. She's the new Rochelle in the sense that they really didn't give her a ton of personality. She did like have a few. She had some good lines. She
got the weirdos line.
She nails that. Like, it's in the trailer, you get this weird kind of awkward like version where Lily says the line, and it's like, you're Nancy's daughter. That's what I said when I saw the trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we called that when we saw the trailer.
Yeah, the trailer. Like, so the trailer. What's in the trailer that's not in the movie? I saw the Polaroid of Nancy, and I was like, that's not in the movie.
The levitating boots. That wasn't in there.
Is the levitating boots in the trailer?
Yeah, they're the thing where it's like she's rising off the floor and just her toes are connecting, and that's the callback to the scene where Nancy floats.
Oh,
in the first
one. Yeah.
That was
I didn't even notice. I didn't. I just rewatched the trailer before we recorded this, but I didn't notice that shot. There's like the way they set up certain scenes in the trailer is very different from the film. Like,
the bath scene is very different.
Yeah, the bath scene is like completely different. That is, they recorded some ADR dialogue, and then there's deleted scenes, and they shot those differently because the way that like that bath scene, like there's a shot of Tabby saying a line that I think you see her mouth moving. So besides Tabby, there is Lourdes, who played by Zoe Luna, who throughout the movie I described as the tall one, who the script very awkwardly has to keep reminding you is transgender. And it's just because, I mean, to be fair, the actress passes very well, and so I honestly don't think the audience would have been aware that she was played by a transgender actress if they weren't told.
Probably, but I mean, props for a trans character played by a trans actor.
Well, first
I'll
off,
give
props
them
for
points
a character played by a trans actor. And frankly, until they revealed that character was trans, I was really, really getting worried about some of Frankie's lines getting turfy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I think Tabby had a line also about like reproduction. Like they're talking about like baby making, and I'm just like, and she's like,
yeah,
like, and
it's like, oh, we make life inside us. We're basically already, we already have superpowers, and yeah, and then Lourdes comes in with the line about, yeah, well, us trans girls, we have magic all our own, and I'm like, saved it.
Yes, good. Like I mean, the problem. So I feel like the problem is more pronounced in this movie about like witches being a female term more than it was in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the first movie you're just following 4 witches and then you see a shop owner. Like it's like in high school people tend to do socialize. Like I was in a very integrated social group, but like there are definitely like, cliques and groups of people who tend to socialize more by gender, and that is normal. And so like 4 high school friends get into witchcraft, like that's normal. I don't know. Like my big problem with this movie is I have 2 problems with this movie. One is just that they don't independently develop the coven. Like this isn't a movie about 4 friends getting into witchcraft. This is a movie about Lily.
Yes.
Like
yes. Mm-hmm. That was one of my biggest beefs. It was, where is the covenship from the first one? Where is the sisterhood? Where is the witchcraft?
Right.
We have like that one montage.
Yeah. And I feel
we have one ritual. They don't tell us what it's for, and it seems kind of slapped together.
I feel like there was a degree of them not wanting to overlap the first movie too much. Like I feel like they wanted to be like, but that's why this works better as a sequel than it does as a remake, because like you're not spending the time to establish, like, I mean, first off, magic is way more is even more powerful in this movie than it was in the first movie. Like,
yeah.
I'm just like, wow.
It's literal superpowers.
Yeah, no, I'm like, but that's a different issue. So like, but like the first one, you get to spend time with Bonnie and Rochelle and Nancy individually, and they develop these characters. Like you see a lot more Nancy because of Nancy being the antagonist of the film as it's revealed in the second half of the movie. And then but even like Bonnie and Rochelle, who don't get as much, like still get scenes and development on their journey through their arcs. Rochelle's doesn't make as much sense because she seems to feel bad about what she's doing. Right. But then still that is still apparently like high on Nancy's Kool-Aid. Like I'm like Bonnie, it makes sense. Like Bonnie's getting everything she wants. Like Bonnie is not getting the downside. Rochelle is like, having
maybe, misgivings. Yeah,
maybe this was wrong. Woo! The light's turning green. Like,
but we don't even get that in this one. The coven seems to fall into the trap that you mentioned for Rochelle's character in the first one, that her whole character basically is black.
Yeah.
It seems like the coven is very much like that. It's black, is trans,
fair,
is a Twilight stand.
I disagree. I think the defining thing about Lourdes is that she's tall.
Fair.
Fair. Like okay, watching the film.
You're right. I take that back. She's tall.
She's tall.
She's fabulous, by the way.
Right. No,
I really liked her.
And again, like as I said before, all of these actors are acting the shit out of these lines. Like they are doing an amazing job. Like, so I have no criticism of any of these performances. So that's
just the writing.
That's my first criticism. My second criticism, and this is my main criticism with the Coven is more so as as making this only really works as a sequel and then it doesn't work as well as the Craft movie. But if you think of it as Lily's movie, it's kind of fine. Like it's.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But if it's a sequel about Lily, then it's kind of fine. Like, I would rather see a movie where they get development. Like, I would rather know these characters better. Like, I want to see what the hell Frankie does on her own. Like, I really want to see Frankie on some, like, I don't even know what the kids, what a Twilight stan who's under the age of 18 would do in 2020 on the internet. TikTok, I guess. Like, but anyways, like, oh my God, she 100% has a TikTok channel or whatever account, whatever you call a TikTok, like a thing that people have. I am with it. I know what the kids are into.
We're old.
I'm so old.
We are old.
God, no. I feel like my mother calling Thundercats Tiger Cats when I was 8. No, when I was like, yeah. It's, anyways. But this is my biggest complaint about the movie, and this is the one that drives me nuts, is that the antagonist, David Duchovny's Adam, is not established enough as a magic user prior to him disguising himself as her mother. So you get like 14 minutes in, we have a scene where and I logged the time just because where Lily finds looks at the bookshelf and finds the book, like Adam's character's book, the character Adam's book. And then she finds the news clipping where he's like, oh, he's like this MRA like guru, like this is like bad misogyny. And then you get like, and so I was getting abuser vibes from him.
I was getting that too. At the very least, like this is a guy who is emotionally abusing his kids.
Right.
And anybody who's writing about, what was it? The Sacred Masculine was the name of the book. I'm like, anyone who writes a book with that title is like, oh, I'm going to side-eye the crap out of that. But it was nice that it was like, oh, we've established the antagonist of this movie is toxic masculinity. I'm here for it.
Right. But there's no build. Okay, by the way, is it just me? Or like that bookcase, when you saw that bookcase, were you assuming it was a hidden door?
Yes.
Right? Okay, so because the way it's structured, there's the inset part and there's a gap on the floor at the bottom.
Right?
And she drops the book,
for that to
and
be
the
like...
book falls out of her hands, and so the shot, like, and the way it highlights the bookcase, you're like, this is a secret door. And like,
yes.
And I know, like, it has to just be like poor direction that they accidentally highlighted this thing.
Maybe. I was waiting for that to open up at some later point, that like she'd find it in the middle of the night and it would be like this whole nook with all sorts of like altar stuff.
Yeah.
But no, nothing.
Right.
Also, this man clearly had a cult. Why did we not see the cult?
I think they showed it to us.
They didn't. They lied.
So no, it's like, I think it's the scene where he's got like the talking stick. Yeah. And like, I think that's supposed to imply it's a cult, but like so many like real world shitty gurus do that stuff.
It could have just as easily have been like a talk therapy group or like a support meeting, because someone had just died in that particular scene. So
right, it's not established. Like, I feel like if I was doing a rewrite of the script, if I was, and because the movie is short. Like, I mean, it's not like, it's not too short in the sense that like it's a movie length, but it's not a long movie. You could add 15 minutes to this movie and it would still feel fine if it was 15 minutes establishing the antagonist. Like, what if the girls are doing shit in the woods? What if one night in the woods they found the cult? Like, and you can put him in a mask. Like, you can put David Duchovny in like, hey, we can go classic shitty movie. Like, put him in like a cow skull mask or something, or a deer skull.
Oh,
or,
hell yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Some sort of like long animal skull. Like, and just like not show their faces and like show them doing magic, and just establish that there's like this dark magic user out there that like is at the periphery, and then like make that a danger in the world that they're worried about. Like,
Right. And they have those little flashes that Lily has over the course of the movie of like, oh, there's obviously this lurking danger that includes snakes and ritual daggers and fire. And I'm like, all right, I'm keyed up for the cult sequence. I'm ready for some sort of,
Right.
big, scary sacrifice scene, and nothing.
Nothing. And also, that's a whole thing. Also, Timmy wasn't a member of this group. It's really clear that Timmy wasn't a member of this group. He was just best friends with a member of this group.
I think they were trying to pull him in and just didn't make it.
But it's like, so does Adam just kill anyone who he perceives as weak? Because he kills Timmy because you remade him in your image. I'm like, well, I mean, their spell was to enlighten his higher self, so all they did was call out stuff that was already in him. That's actually that was actually a really smart way to get around the way Threefold seems to work in this universe, that don't change him, in just bring out the better part of him that already exists.
Exactly.
And so
and I think there may have been something where Timmy was either an initiate to the group, or he was a prospect for the group. And then, Adam saw him kind of swing his attitudes in the other direction after the spell, and was like, oh, you're no longer worthy, but you know our secrets, so you have to die.
Except none of that's in there. None of that's in the movie.
Exactly. We're left to assume entirely too much.
I think all the snake imagery is because they had snake imagery in the first The Craft, and so they had to have snake imagery in the second The Craft.
Oh, yeah, right up to having the same damn kind of snake go across the lawn in front of Lily when she comes up to this man's house.
Yeah. Except that was a Sarah thing, not a Nancy thing. Why would Lily have it?
Well, because she's in the Sarah role this time around.
Right?
She's making a move. She's in a transitional period.
She's not. She has no connection to Sarah.
Well, I think in this instance, in the first one, the snake was kind of a warning, but not really, because we see it at the beginning, and it's this sort of vague threat from the homeless guy, and then we see it on Nancy later, and then Nancy becomes the threat. So I think it was a weird callback to snake equals wisdom, but also threat.
In the first movie, it's clear that it's because Sarah sees the snake because she's about to encounter the snake, and she's afraid of snakes.
Right.
So it represents Sarah's fear.
Right.
In the first movie. And so this is something to be afraid of, and that's why the imagery goes, and that's why Nancy uses snakes against Sarah, because it's a thing Sarah's afraid. I mean, yes, Sarah makes Nancy see her fingers as snakes, but that's because again, Sarah's afraid of snakes.
Scare.
And
it was an easy scare.
Also, yeah, what are you gonna make her fingers turn into? Carrots?
No,
snakes.
Centipedes.
Yeah,
centipedes would have been great.
Yeah, but that would have been really way more expensive with 1996 CGI. That's way more segments and things.
Legs and wiggly and ugh.
You can just snake is way less polygons.
But so they did bring the snake back in this one, like you said, as the symbol of danger.
There's so much
of fear.
This movie is full of such random stuff out of nowhere. So first off, so the book scene, right where we see the book seems pulled out of her hand for some reason. And that's not explained. But which is why I thought it was going to be a clue towards a door also being there. But then we get to the movie's first fake out that goes nowhere. And that is her hearing what sounds like a woman in distress. Right? And that's our first masturbation scene.
Yep.
Where it's really one of the brothers hasn't learned that you use headphones when you live in a house with other people and you're a teenager masturbating to porn. You use headphones.
Especially if you're partial to something that's loud.
But also, that scene falls apart for me for a multitude of reasons. Well, first off, it means nothing. It's just meant to make you feel uneasy for a minute. And but it does not serve the plot at all. It does not serve the plot at all.
I honestly thought she was going to walk in on her mom and the boyfriend. I honestly thought that was what it was going to be, and that it was just going to be something awkward. And I'm like, I don't want to see this man's butt. And then it was just that. And I'm like, oh, somehow that's worse.
You haven't seen David Duchovny's butt before? I thought everybody.
No, I have, but it was
okay,
like 30 years ago.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, it was better at the time.
Exactly.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to shame David Duchovny. He looks very good for his age.
I'm sure his butt still looks fabulous.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I particularly wanted to see it in that context.
Right. But here's the thing that actually bothered me more, and this is just a look. I am going to admit I have viewed many things on the internet in my lifetime. The sounds of that video that guy was watching were not normal pornography sounds. It is clearly the sound of someone in distress. It is not the way that sounds in pornography. Like, it is... There's a certain tone. In fact, actually, it's mocked later in a scene by where Timmy calls out a guy who starts to do like the fake orgasm yeses in the while in the sex ed class.
Yeah.
It's the way that actresses tend to perform in porn does not sound like that. So either it's a poor audio choice, or that guy was watching some really effed up stuff.
I think it may have been the second, especially considering like
the
environment he's been raised in and what his dad clearly been teaching him.
But I don't trust the filmmakers thinking that deeply.
Yeah, I don't either.
Especially how you are. So my wife picks up on the bookcase independently. I picked up on the bookcase independently. And we all three of us, like, so you and myself and the two people I've talked to about this film all thought, oh, there's totally a hidden doorway behind that bookcase.
Yeah.
We all thought it.
Mm-hmm.
We all looked at that set design and said, oh. And the way it's shot and the way that they time that, like, it all looks like it. And no, it's not there. And it was probably never meant to be there. But they did not think about the way that they composed those shots or what they were implying. And we're too, like, so... I don't know. Like, so I feel like if you add like 10 more minutes of like I think like her actually like either finding a hidden altar room, that would also do it.
Or even just like some ritual tools or regalia or something squirreled away somewhere in this house besides like the family crest on the wall, which was not a family crest, by the way. Just something.
I don't know that symbol, so I can't say what it is.
Well, just family crests don't look like that.
Well, I don't know what family... But also, it's really unclear if that scene happened.
Yeah.
She wakes up.
Unreliable narrator stuff. We don't know if it was a dream or not.
We cut from that scene with her waking up screaming, so...
Yeah.
That might not have... We don't even know if that's... I don't know. Do we spot those in the house elsewhere? Like in other scenes?
No. I think they were just on the wall in the... I guess it's his study.
Yeah. So, like, we don't know if that happened.
True.
So it's
we do see that area, like, at another time in the movie, and I think that there was something on the wall there, but, like, it wasn't focused on it, so we couldn't really tell.
Another thing that, like, and this is something that my wife pointed out, why are the jeans so important later? Like, it's, who washed the jeans?
Like, that was kind of odd. It was like, okay, are we attempting to establish Adam as like a caring individual, or maybe they were stealing her blood for something? That's where my brain went. It's like, oh, they're going to take that blood, they're going to use it for something, and nope.
It's never. Yeah, no. It's like it feels important.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, did she really get her period, or was she set up by the girls and then the glamour wore off? Like, like I immediately like I was like, is it the Adam suspicious or the girl suspicious? Because we don't know enough about the characters at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going because again, like the first craft, the antagonist is in the coven.
Right.
So like I'm looking all directions at this point in the movie, and like I feel like this is going to point us somewhere. This is going to be important, and no, it's not important. They don't care.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was, by the time the whole, oh, thanks for washing my jeans thing rolled around, I was already like growing suspicious of Adam. So it was like, okay, if he washed her jeans, there has to be something to do with the blood. There has to be something coming with that later. And it's another thread where I feel like there was a cult storyline that they were going to do, and they either never fleshed it out, or they scrapped it on a rewrite, or something. There's just so much left in this movie that feels like relics from another story that was trying to be told and then wasn't.
Also, Timmy doesn't know how to use a Ouija board.
Yeah.
Ghost Timmy points at it with the pointy end of the planchette instead of the Oculus, the window. That's Timmy. That's not how you use a Ouija. That's not how you use a Ouija board. I know you're a ghost,
I was so confused in that scene. I'm like, wait, what the heck is it spelling? What's it going over? Oh, he's using the pointy end. Someone doesn't know their lore.
Timmy, you own this. You supposedly talked to your mom. She told you to clean your room, which was a great scene. That actually was really funny.
That was cute. That was really cute.
And also like the response of, that must have taken forever to spell.
Yes.
And he was like, yes, it did. Like,
we were
was
all
funny.
That.
That was a good line. It's
I liked some of the development they did with Timmy and Lily. I thought that a good deal of that was very heartfelt and felt, real.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a conversation I could reasonably see two teenage people having.
Yeah, it still felt like it was Lily's movie and not the Coven's movie. It's Woke Timmy takes up a huge chunk of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's really significant. Like
he does the cafeteria walk with them, and it's like, okay, so they're gonna have a coven of 5?
Actually, I would have loved that.
I would have liked that too.
I would have loved Timmy and the Coven.
Yes.
I would have.
Let's make it all inclusive.
I would have been like, yes, that's an accurate depiction of the groups of and yes, it is 4 women to 1 guy.
Yep.
And there's at least 1 queer person there. 2 queer people. 2 queer people. 1 guy for every 4 girls, but it's like, this is reflective of my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But no. God, it would have been so much better if it was the ghost of Timmy in her room.
It would have been. It would have been like a real nice, like, bit of foreshadowing. First of all, it would have added that horror element that I think Blumhouse was looking for in that particular scene.
Yeah.
And it would have really set up the next day's shock a lot better.
Well, imagine
that came out of freaking nowhere.
Yeah, imagine that scene, and you see the guy by the door, and then she sees the figure, and she turns the light on, and the figure's gone.
Yes.
That's the scene. And then you find out Timmy's dead the next day.
And then it's like, oh no, that was him, and he was trying to warn her. It would have been perfect.
Right?
Ugh. I would have flipped my lid over that. I would have absolutely loved it. But no, it's just Isaiah sleepwalking for some reason, which also never gets talked about.
It was never established and never talked about again.
That's it.
Yeah. I have in all caps in my notes, what is the point of the sleepwalking creepy scene?
Yes.
So lots of little things why do they just do shit out in the open? And effectively, Lily has the Zach Morris time freeze, if you really think about it. It's the Zach Morris time freeze.
Yeah.
When they're escaping Timmy's house and they're casting a scene, she freezes them in the door. It's like, this is the point where Zach Morris talks to the camera.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they're literally standing in the middle of the cafeteria chanting. I'm like, okay, no one does that.
Well, and think about from the point of view of the people in the cafeteria, that first off, that would draw attention. Secondly, that means that because they probably didn't sit down in exactly the positions they were when they were chanting, that from the experienced people in the cafeteria, you saw 4 girls chanting at the cafeteria who then disappeared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right there.
Also, there was way too much activity in that cafeteria for them to like play off of. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That should just be a bunch of people sitting.
Yeah.
But they got to make it dynamic. I understand. But
yeah. It's, well, I mean, to be fair, at my high school, there was a lunch, like the way lunches were structured, there were like 3 lunch shifts. So like you could be arguably, I don't know.
Yeah, mine was the same way, but still.
Yeah.
And speaking of that scene real quick, is it just me, or did the entirety of like that whole witchcraft montage thing up to and including the getting made up scene kind of feel like an independent film created by witch talk influencers?
I don't know.
It was very superpowery and very sparkly and didn't seem to have a lot of purpose.
So yeah, it's like, I mean, most of it was just glamours that were established. So my whole thing is that like they've really increased the power of witchcraft in this movie. The glamour stuff was established in the first film, like the ability to make yourself, like they call it shape-shifting. Like where cause Nancy shapeshifts into Sarah, sort of, but I always just assumed that was a glamour.
Yeah.
Like, and so like shapeshift into one each other. I'm like, what shapeshift? Like, why is that?
Like,
I feel like
they mentioned it initially, and I was like, okay, so they're gonna learn to like turn into animals. I figured like, oh, they're gonna learn to like turn into cats or deer.
It's really clear. It's really clear if you get to the end of the movie. It's just setting up David Duchovny disguising himself as her mother.
Yes.
As Lily's mom. So but I'm just like, that's just glamours. But so like most of the stuff in that scene, like, you know, be it the makeup stuff they're doing or but first off, like, okay, Human Torch, like,
oh my
Tabby,
God.
like, it's just like got a lighter at the end of her finger now. I'm like, that would be super convenient, but like, I don't know. I feel like the first Craft movie, like they give them superpowers effectively through magic, but I feel like there's a lot more like attempts to ground it.
That is still a lot more subtle.
But it's also like it's not visually flashy. Like, yeah, you can fly in that first movie, but like you're not surrounded by a glowing aura when you do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the auras was, I thought, like we just want to make it cinematic, but that I can like, but so like the flamethrower, but like also, but like the time stopping is like, wow, we're just going full superpowers here. Magic is super powerful, and apparently, like, anyone can get it because Nancy wasn't born with it. Like, so they do establish in this film, I think, some good world building in the sense that their first question to Lily is, how long have you been practicing? Because it's the implied that you can gain these magical powers just by practicing witchcraft if you weren't born with them, but they are playing off the natural witch stuff that they got from the first movie, because Sarah inherited her powers, so she already had them at the beginning of the movie. Lily, and we're establishing in this movie that people who weren't born with powers, once they gain powers, can pass those powers on in this universe. And so that's nice and consistent. That like, at least like, it isn't like you have a special genetic code thing. It's anyone can achieve this level. It's just that people whose parent, you know, who had a parent who already had this power can pass on those powers already, so you don't have to unlock them.
Yeah, it's like if you had a parent who already, you know, was awakened to this, then you are more receptive or more prone to it,
or at least already awakened to it.
Yes.
And so that's like, I was like, oh, actually, that's better than the implications of the first movie.
Yes.
So like, it's not a bloodline thing; it's a parent awakened thing. Like, okay, good, all right. So that was a nice cleanup. But if I were the U.S. military, in a world where 3 teenagers off the street in a random high school on multiple occasions have gotten, like, 3 to 4 teenagers in schools have gotten superpowers multiple occasions where they can, like, do magic shit, I'm recruiting people, like, right, for this? Like, oh, we've got a soldier who can stop time. Like,
well, then we get Fort Salem, so.
Well, right, no, but, like, how is that not ever the inevitable conclusion? Like, if it's this easy,
Yeah.
if it's
well,
this,
then why isn't everyone doing it?
then why isn't everyone doing it?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I like the callback to the first movie where it's literally the same book.
I did like that.
Because
that was nice.
like, yeah, like it's, I don't think that's a real book. But it's 100% in their universe published by Llewellyn, I bet.
Oh my God, yes.
Like,
Absolutely.
And there's still, like, I love when they open it up and it's like, this is clearly still like a shitty 90s witchcraft book, because where they could
With
never,
the font.
like, there's no good graphic design inside the book, and like it's like crappy margins, and like the layouts are like, I'm like, oh, this feels accurate to books in my collection. I think I've got a Teutonic Magic book that is not all that different in its internal layout.
Yeah.
All right. Like, it's, so I enjoyed that. It's, yeah, like, again, like, I feel like so much of this movie is like it needed 10 more minutes and then like 5 minutes of cuts.
Yes. I honestly would have watched like another half hour of this movie if it would have established the Coven members more independently of each other, and if it had established more of the stuff with Adam as a magic user, as a cult leader, just as a threat.
Yeah.
You know, no, beyond like, oh, he's saying some things to his son that's making me uncomfortable.
No, he feels,
or, oh,
like, Adam feels like a threat in this movie, but just like an abuser
for different reasons.
threat, like a real world threat, not a I'm gonna disguise myself. Like, they did good. Like, some of the setup is good. Like the setup with the relationship with the mother, about like how the phrases that her mom says about like differences, and then like Adam not getting that right when he's disguised.
Where she says
like,
your difference is your power, and he's like, your difference is dangerous, and that tips her off, and is meant to tip off the audience as well, I think.
And it's like it's you get to like, and like that's set up well, but like it's just, it's, we need more of the cult, and we need more of the Coven. And so like this movie, like, yeah, again, it falls apart as a remake because we don't establish the magic enough. Like, there's not enough of the actual witchcraft in this movie. It assumes you know what it looks like. Like, the montage works for like establishing that, oh no, the bonding happens and the witchcraft happens, but that montage only works if you've seen the witchcraft in the first movie.
True.
And like to do that work, it only does that work if it's like a like you know, like, because sometimes you get like a sequence of films where a character has a routine, and in the first movie you spend the whole time with the routine, and then you make a sequel and then you show that routine in half the time, and then if you get to a third movie you show that whole sequence in less than a minute because you've established it in the two previous films. Am I directly thinking of the Hanzo the Razor series of films that no one listening to this should watch? Yes. Am I describing a scene that would make this an explicit podcast if I didn't already flag it as explicit, but I'm still not going to describe it? Even more, yes. Don't ever watch those movies, even if they are in the Criterion Collection. That's so messed up. If you want to watch that actor play a samurai, watch some Zatoichi. Don't watch Hanzo the Razor.
I loved that movie, by the way.
Was that
Zatoichi?
Oh, the remake, or?
Yeah, the remake.
Okay, yeah, I'm talking about the actor who played the original Zatoichi, like in the classics. He also did the series of 3 films in the 70s called, well, they get referred to in the U.S. as Hanzo the Razor.
I've heard of them. I will never see them.
Never see them. The sequence I'm talking about involves his penis. I used to host a midnight showing every year of the first movie in that series, which is why I know it very well. It did involve me getting around problematic parts of the film by getting up in front of the screen and screaming at the audience, "Why are you watching this movie?" Which would then get them not to think about how awful what they were watching was, just like, and there were also rules where we mock Hanzo, we don't root for Hanzo. So, like, okay, so also, I'm not a fan of the term warlock being used at the end of the movie. I mean, sure, it might apply to Adam, but he didn't necessarily break an oath to his own group.
Right.
He was just a dick.
Yes.
If anything, he didn't, like, okay, so here's the thing. I know it's supposed to be a pagan group because the Wikipedia page told me. That didn't feel like a pagan group. His stuff felt more like... some of it felt like some new agey guru stuff.
Yeah, maybe pseudo-Masonic at most, but
right,
not really.
No, yeah, it doesn't feel pagan. It feels like almost like I feel like if you want to go for I'm getting more of like a Thelemic vibe and like the more Crowley-esque occult stuff. Mm-hmm. And those guys would rather be like sorcerers or like, I don't know, like some of them might use warlock, but like
well, they did use the term at the end of the movie.
Right, no, but I'm saying, like, I mean, Frankie says it at the end of the movie. I don't think that David Duchovny's character ever describes what he is.
No.
Which is fine, which is good. That's fine. But I'm like, that's not the right word. Like, I don't know. I hate the term warlock so much that I'm just going to be like, bah! Even when it's used in an appropriate context. I'm going to be like, bah! Call him something else. Don't like it.
I'm sorry, that's such a noise. Okay, sorry, continue.
There's a very funny facial expression to go with it, but you'll just have to trust me on that.
I demand Instagram shots of that face.
I don't have an Instagram. I mean, I technically do to keep someone else from taking my username, but I don't. I've maybe posted a photo to it, if ever. I don't think I have.
You have a Twitter?
I have a Twitter. That's true. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Tumblr.
Give us the angry warlock noise face.
I don't even know what that. Oh, well, the problem is I don't want to take a photo of myself right now. I look terrible. I dressed for a podcast.
We dressed for radio.
I'm wearing clothes, but they don't look good on me. So no, I'm not taking a photograph of myself. All right, so I'm trying to think. I'm trying to look through my notes to see if there's anything else I haven't mentioned. Trailer out of context. Why don't we see these? Why are they just doing shit out in the open? Adam's an abuser. Why? Where's the magic come from? Oh, people want to fuck woke Timmy. Everyone wants to fuck woke Timmy. That was really clear.
Okay.
No, it's just
that was...
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Oh, you mean in the context of the movie? I thought that was like the social media response.
Oh, no. Has there been a social media response? I don't pay attention to young people, and it hasn't been on my Tumblr. Literally, no one's been talking about this movie on any of my social media circles. So,
which might be telling, but yes, like everyone, like we see it. To be fair, we see it established early on that one of the witches has a crush, but then as soon as he gets woke, it's like woo.
Yeah, it's so I will say that Kyle of Stormwood and Associates said he liked the movie.
Well, there's that.
He said that on his Twitter.
There
Lamaphilia. We go. His Twitter is Lamaphilia, because he's making fun of the way Vin Diesel says family or La Familia at some point in the Fast and the Furious movies.
God.
So it's an obscure Fast and the Furious joke filtered through like 3 layers. I think it might like be like making a joke about someone's impression of Vin Diesel saying it. So, yeah, but this has been otherwise quiet on my Tumblr dash, and I follow a bunch of witches. So, maybe this will get them to actually watch the movie. I don't know. It's the cult. Yeah, the occultism of dreams. Oh yeah. Of course you're adopted. Look how short you are. Lily's 5 feet tall. Literally, I looked it up.
She is. She's teeny.
She is tiny. Look how tall your mom is. If that's your mom, you're 5 feet tall. That's not biologically your mom. There's like 6 inches between you, unless your mom banged like a really short dude, which is possible. Like, I mean, my father-in-law's 5 feet tall.
Or I just figured she hadn't hit her growth spurt yet, because I was also tiny when I was roughly that age.
I mean, how
and
old
I
is she
didn't hit
supposed
my
to be?
last growth spurt until like late high school. So
I mean, my first thought is that, oh, they fell in the trap where they cast the daughter too short compared to the parent, which is a thing in television. It's just a thing that happens in television where no matter the age of the kids, they are always cast shorter than the parents, regardless of the gender, regardless of the age. And you see this all the time. Like, it's especially egregious with guys, because they'll cast them shorter because they look younger, but they're adult actors, but that means they never grow. But I was taller than my dad in 8th grade. Like, my dad's 5'10", I'm 6'3". I hit 6'1" in 8th grade. So
you
like
tall people. I've always been tiny, so I just look at tall people and just go, why?
I'm just glad that my brother, who is 6'2", did not get that extra inch, so I got turned in taller than my brother. My sister is like 5'6", 5'4". I honestly don't know. She's in that ballpark. And like my mom is like 5'6". So she's shorter than my mom. She's got to be shorter than 5'6". So like, but all the men on my mother's side of the family, like I'm 6'3". I am not one of the tall people on my mother's side of the family. Like my mom's brother's 6'7".
Oh my.
So like, but that's the thing. But like, my mom is a little bit shorter than her mom, but my aunt is taller than her mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, because my aunt's like 5'11". Like, but so like, yes, it happens where kids are shorter than their parents, but it's not like frequent. Now, Fairuza Balk, who plays Nancy, is 5'4", so her having a 5-foot tall daughter makes sense.
It does.
So that's why I was like, my instinctively was like, oh, this is bad cat. Wait, she's going to be Nancy's daughter. How tall is Fairuza Balk? Okay. This is, how did you not know you were adopted? That's just a thing that like popped into my head during the adoption scene. I was just like, oh, come on, you're adopted. I don't know. So I guess my last, do you, before we talk about the Nancy part, do you have anything else you want to go through?
I'm checking my notes. No, not really. Most of what I have is related to like this having like plot holes and the superpowers stuff and the witchcraft feeling very much like an add-in.
Yeah.
Like it was there for like flavor text in the beginning and then for a Deus Ex Machina at the end, but that was it.
I feel like I have one more thing in my notes. And this is not, because it's separate, because it's not my observation. And this is an observation that you will be able to talk more on than I will. But my wife and I were watching this, like I said, the first time we watched it. And while I am a genderqueer non-binary person, I was assigned male at birth. I have never had to deal with certain things. I have not had certain experiences. My wife looked at that scene with the period scene, effectively, and her response was like, how did she not feel that? Your pants would be wet.
Yeah, and you kind of, okay, here's the TMI portion, and if you're still listening and you don't like talk of menstruation, maybe mute this for the next 30 seconds.
But also, congrats on making it through this far into a Witchcraft podcast. You're over an hour in. And
so when you get your period, even if it's like early on in your tenure of having them, there is a waterfall effect, that would have to have happened for her to be bleeding that much that it soaks through her jeans and drips onto the floor. Generally what happens is, you like when she stands up and there's the big blood stain on her butt, and I'm like, oh, poor baby. We have all been there. All of us who have had a heavy period at one point or another, we've had something like that happen where you bleed through your jeans. But like the amount of blood that was happening there, it's like, oh, honey, you need to go and see your gynecologist because that's not a normal amount of blood that for you to expel without noticing it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, damp pants aside, she would have felt like you feel the blood leave you when it goes.
Yeah. So
especially if it's that much.
That's like that's why like my original thought, like that's why my wife pointed that out during the scene.
Yeah.
And then the jeans were clean with her mom not having washed them, and so my brain went to, was that a glamour?
Yeah.
Because
also there was like a blood stain like across her thigh, and I'm like, okay, that's either because they reshot this scene and this is not the first take they've done, or they fucked up on where that blood went, because that would not happen.
Well, I assumed it was from taking the pants off.
Yeah.
Like that was just my assumption was just it was smeared from the pants. Just like how she's got blood on the back of her hand.
Well, yeah, but like in the classroom, if you look at her lap before she gets up, there's a blood stain there, and it's like, no, that wouldn't happen because it would all go straight down.
Okay. Yeah. I figured that was just bad. Like, I mean, that has to just be bad costuming.
Like, yeah, and
which the movie had a female director, so it's disappointing that she wasn't paying attention to the detail.
Yeah, and again, like for her to be bleeding so much that it drips and doesn't just like leave a big stain on the seat is like, oh, that's worrisome, honey. You need to like go to the nurse, not the bathroom.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But that being said, I think that her reaction to it was extremely, extremely accurate. I mean, I've been there myself where I bled through something in class and it was just awful. And I did like, the girls coming in and being like, oh, here's a pair of shorts.
Yeah, that was a good way to connect the characters.
But the one complaint I do have there, they give her a pair of shorts. No one offers her a pad or a tampon.
That's...
Because that should have been the next thing out of their mouths. Is, do you need a tampon?
Yeah.
So
either a tampon or a pad should be offered.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, no.
Like before shorts.
If you're handing me your shorts. It's like, do you want to clean blood out of these too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think that brings us to the Nancy connection.
Yes, which I was really happy about that payoff because, we kind of called it from the trailer and like they were alluding to it throughout the film. And like the minute they established, yes, she's adopted, I'm like, yes, called it. There it is. Give me the Nancy. Give me Fairuza. And there she was.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And it's, but I got some things. So first off, what happens the next 5 minutes in that scene when she gets there? Because she gave explicit instructions that she didn't want her daughter to ever know who she was.
Yeah, that's going to be even more awkward than the beginning of the movie.
That's going to be such an uncomfortable conversation. That's just going to be like, oh boy. Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Like, it's... Like, I mean, hopefully Nancy's in a more emotionally healthy place than she was when she was in a straight jacket. But it's been 24 years.
Well, like, I mean, that was something that I looked at in the movie and just kind of went, "Oh, Nancy, honey, no!" Like, it's 20 some years later. The last time we saw her, she was in an asylum in a straitjacket being sedated. And, it's all these years later. Clearly, she has not had things easy. At some point, she's been in a crisis center. Now she's in some kind of facility, although it looks like it might be outpatient. Clearly her life has not really gotten any better. And I was just like, oh, Nancy,
so there are a number of questions I have. So first off, I feel like, and this is just my instinct based on the way that certain scenes happened, I think there's an earlier draft of this script where Adam is her father.
Ooh.
I think there's a version of this script where that's true. I don't know if it's, I don't know if that's the case, but it feels like it's not in the movie. Like, it's not directly in the movie, but I feel like there's certain things in that end confrontation where it's kind of implied when he talks about, like, which mother, like, where he clearly knows.
Yeah.
But it's,
and he talks about having taken another witch's powers at some point, and I thought that was going to be, Nancy.
Well, or it could have been like, we don't know what happened to the mother,
Right,
of the three boys. Like, there's so many implications.
Oh yeah, that's
like,
true.
It's like, and boy, is he lucky he only had boys. But like, again, this would work so much better with like one stepbrother.
Yes.
But like, so there's that. But regardless of whether Adam was, who is the father? Because let's look at the timeline. Nancy is in a mental institution in like roughly 1996 when the first movie came out. Right.
And she's what, maybe 16, 17 years old.
Right. Our main character is like, again, like maybe 16, 17 years old. So she got pregnant, obviously, like after she had already been in a mental institution. All right. So
now, was she still there at the time, or was she out?
Right. No, that's the whole thing. Like, did she have recovery and was released and then go back in? Was she like, or are there implications?
Yeah.
Like, there's not a happy story that results in the existence of Lily.
No, there is not. I kind of gathered, like, from everything they talk about with Nancy, whatever has happened to her since the first movie, very little, if any, of it has been good.
Yeah. Like, it's, yeah.
Like, I wanted them to drive up to like a little house somewhere, even if it was like a townhouse or an apartment or a freaking trailer. Just have a trailer and have that be another callback. I was certain that we were going to see Nancy at the end of the movie, but I wanted it to be in something resembling a good circumstance where it seemed like even if she's still bound, maybe she got her life together, maybe she's at least living independently and kind of making her own way and taking her life back. But nope, she's more or less where we left her, and that's really sad to me.
Yeah, no, that is really sad. It's her whole story. Nancy is a sad story.
Yes. And I mean, in the first one, it's kind of like, you get like, well, that's what happens when you do bad stuff and you go too far. But by this time, you feel bad for her, and it's like, oh, well, whatever you did then, you don't deserve this.
Right. No, it's so Nancy's story in the first The Craft is she is a person who has been clearly abused. She feels powerless.
Yeah.
And she desperately wants control over her life. And she goes too far to get that control. And she's an unstable person who suddenly has effectively godlike powers. And she doesn't have a good, like, moral balance in that moment. Like, she tries to kill Sarah. Like, it's... Killing Chris is... I get it. Like, I'm not... Like, I don't want to... I'm not justifying the murder of another person in those circumstances, but, like... I can understand as, like, a person who suddenly has that much power and there's someone who has, wronged you that hard. Like, lashing out and killing them.
Yeah.
In a manic fit. Like, no. Like, that tracks. That... I can see myself being driven to that point. Like, I can see that myself being, like, at that point mentally, so I can see how she could. And then, like, going after Sarah is, like, she finally has power, and Sarah tries to take it away, and so she's like, I have to end her. Like, she's not in a stable place, but, like, you see how someone who gets to that point, but you can see a journey back for that person. Like, I actually, like, look at the end of The Craft as, like, the end of The Craft is a tragic ending, because Nancy, who's gone through hell, is now in, like, this awful situation, and Sarah is cold and mean at the end of that movie. Like, she is unforgiving, and she is our hero, but she is I actually, like, I'm like, oh, don't fuck with this person. Like, she just drops a branch, like, near them to, like, freak them out. Like, she's just, like, casually like, I could kill you whenever I wanted. I just don't want to. Like, I'm like, oh, no, you're, like... I feel like the only people I'd want to talk to still after the end of that movie are Bonnie and Rochelle.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like Bonnie and Rochelle, like if you actually look at the end scene of the first The Craft, like they are still being talked into it.
Mm-hmm.
Like and then we're like freak out and then figure out they've gone way too far under this cult of personality of Nancy's. Like it's like they are not strong people necessarily, but they are not like inherently awful people. And Nancy is a person who is in bad circumstances, who is doing bad things, and in many ways does deserve some level of punishment for what she's doing. Like, she at least...
To a point, yes, but
attempted
still.
murder deserves jail. I'm sorry. It's
yes.
like, that's... like, I'm not saying she got what she deserved. I'm saying she deserved something.
Right. It's like she deserves some sort of like mortal, real world legal punishment, not, a lifetime of everything going to shit.
Well, she deserved, well, I mean, here's the thing. I think it's really clear with the end of The Craft that what Sarah did not drive her to her mental state. It's all Sarah did was bind her. But because Nancy was in a mentally unstable spot, that she then had that break and then like was unwilling to let go of that power. I think the movie implies that it was the power that did it to her, but I think that there's a at least more forgiving reading where you could like, and that's why like my dream version of what happened is that Nancy got better, got released, but was still in a financially tenuous position and got pregnant on accident, but in a consensual way.
Oh God, I mean, we hope.
We hope. No, but was in such a bad place that it caused issues where she had to check into a clinic of some sort like for her psychological issues and chose to give up her child.
Right.
And maybe she's just been back in and out of mental institutions because of financial reasons of not being able to properly medicate her psychological issues because the American medical system is a nightmare. That's my hope, because that is the happiest. That is the still sad but happiest version of events of what I can figure out with what we've seen on screen of her character.
Mm-hmm.
There is a worse version than that, where the system fails Nancy.
Yeah, which I think is unfortunately much more likely.
And the system failed Nancy, probably.
Yeah.
And that sucks. But she still might be emotionally in a better place. But she's still going to be super pissed off that Helen brought her damn daughter there after she specifically said, I don't want my daughter to ever meet me or know I exist. She's going to be perfectly nice to Lily, probably, but she's going to have fucking words with Helen.
Yes. That being said, I mean, this does set up like, we could potentially have, yet another movie. I don't know that that's particularly a great idea.
Well, right. It's like it would need a script. And we've got a coven. We've got an established coven. Like, I mean, my fear is that they'd make Nancy the bad guy. Because if you make a third, it's a trilogy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love for them to bring Sarah back as a villain.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yes. That would be my dream.
Bring Sarah back as a villain, bring Bonnie and Rochelle back just as, people who have grown up and, still like studied this stuff.
At least just bring Rochelle back because that actress needs work.
Oh my God.
She's good. And I mean, like, what's Robin Tunney doing right now? The Mentalist has been done for 5 years.
I did see Rachel True as a guest judge on Dragula not too long ago. She's still fabulous.
Yeah. I mean,
I swear to God, she hasn't aged a day.
I mean, Neve Campbell's had a long enough career where she doesn't have to work anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, Robin Tunney also probably doesn't have to work anymore. I mean, she's got those Mentalist bucks coming in.
I would love to see.
She was the lead role on the show in 2019.
Yeah. I would at least like to see like a script pitch for a third one.
Robin Tunney starred in a show that got canceled after one season last year called The Fix
Oh
on
yeah.
ABC. What is that? I don't know what that is. I don't care what that is. It involves lawyers, according to the thing. I stopped watching lawyer shows 20 years ago. Last lawyer show I watched was The Practice. You can't make
Oh
me.
boy.
No, I watched Boston Legal. I take it back. That was funny. That was the most unrealistic lawyer show in the same universe as The Practice. And Ally McBeal.
Anyway. Yes. Oh my God.
And Boston Commons. There's the whole David E. Kelly verse. Although there's a weird thing where in an episode of Ally McBeal, The Practice is on a television show, but that show crosses over with The Practice. Like in a crossover that involved characters from one show and the other and vice versa. Like, what is going on?
Jeez.
I don't know, man.
Anyways.
Like, stuff's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, so possible third Craft movie.
I want Robin, bring back Robin Tunney as the villain.
Yes.
Who sees
Agreed.
Nancy out and just sees revenge without looking at her as a person.
Yes. Or immediately goes, you're out and about and therefore you're probably do something bad, so I have to do like a preemptive strike or whatever. And either that or she has gotten...
Have Sarah running Lyria's shop.
Or Sarah's...
Sarah running Lyria's
gotten
shop.
so far into like her state of things that she's got the same God complex now.
Yeah. Or just like she is unable to see Nancy as anyone other than who Nancy was in the 90s. And just on a revenge kick because she already was cold and full of like power 20. Like she felt like a villain origin story for her in many ways. I'm just saying, listen to me, Sony, make this movie. Make the Craft Endgame. I gave you a title.
Yes.
Complete the trilogy.
Where I was going to say the Craft Homecoming.
Oh, well, that also works. Oh, Homecoming. Yeah. And they go back to L.A.
Exactly.
Yeah, have Sarah running Lyria's shop.
Ooh.
Also, here's the thing. So, again, rewatch The Craft. You know, I don't know why I didn't notice it on the first 2 times I watched the movie, but the third time I watched the movie is when I finally noticed, why the fuck are all these candles lit in Lyria's store?
Yes! Everywhere.
What the hell?
There's wax everywhere. There's open flame dry herbs and curtains
and books.
Everywhere.
She's selling books and dried herbs, and it's full of fire.
It can't possibly be up to code.
That also, how much money is she spending? Like, I'm thinking of that Wint tweet. The drill tweet of I'm spending for help my family, and like the budget were $4,000 on candles, and I'm just like, like it's that shop is a drill tweet. The budget of that shop is a drill tweet. Just like take the fire safety and all the work of having to go around every day and light every candle and snuff every candle, but also don't leave candles burning all over the place without being in the room. So when is she gonna pee? Because she's alone in that store.
They have candles like burning under the frickin' railings, which also appear to be made of wood. It's like, woman, really?
Yeah.
And also, how is she keeping? I know we talked about this before, but how the hell was she keeping that shop in business? This was before the internet.
Yeah, my local witch shop has stayed alive during the pandemic through online sales.
Yeah.
I haven't bought anything from them. I feel awful.
Well, maybe I guess it was the 90s, so she could have been doing mail order. That was a big thing.
Yeah, like maybe she's got her own version of the pyramid collection.
Exactly.
But she's wasting all that wholesale money on candles.
Yeah, like Azure Green or something like that, you know?
Like I was looking at that witch shop and I was like, something always feels off about this witch. Oh my god, all these candles are lit. I've been in plenty of witch shops. You know what they're not full of? Lit candles next to the books. I mean, they're full of candles, but they're for sale and they're on the shelf. Sometimes they're weird. Like, okay, I've been in ones that weirdly display them like all over the place, and it's the most annoying shopping experience ever. Like,
but they're not lit.
They're not lit because they don't want to burn their store down.
Or their stock.
Also, again, you don't like when you burn a candle, it uses the candle, and then you have to replace the candle, which means you are constantly replacing all of these candles.
Mm-hmm.
How are they feeding their family? No, it's
Exactly. It's you're burning down your store or you're burning through your stock. There is no good ending for this, this ambiance.
all right. So we've managed to talk about this movie for an hour and a half in this session, and I don't remember how much I spliced in from the earlier ones. So we should probably
a
wrap
good
up final
10
thoughts.
minutes.
This is gonna be a long episode. You guys, it's this time of year. This is December. We're going back to short. Sorry, I could give you 2 long episodes in a row. We're going back to my normal 20 to 30 minutes. Oh, unless somehow they make a Practical Magic 2 in the next week. If they make Practical Magic 2 in the next week, Bree and I will have to go record 2 episodes, to talk about the first one, which I'm saving for some time in the future when I run out of ideas. So final thoughts on The Craft Legacy.
I liked it for what it was. It was clearly not made for someone my age, but there were just enough Easter eggs and callbacks to the first one where it was like, okay, yeah, I get it. The payoff at the end with Nancy being there was glorious, even though, on reflection, it's like, oh, no, Nancy, honey bunny, I'm so sorry. And I want to see more of this young coven, and I am always and forever, as you well know, very, very here for witches against toxic masculinity. So that was great for me. True. And yes, it committed a lot of sins. Yes, there were more holes in the plot than your average garden sieve, but I still really liked it.
Yeah, it's my thoughts are it fails as a remake, it works as a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the movie. I think it's a decent movie. It's not as good as the first one in storytelling. The first one is surprisingly holds up in its storytelling and the tightness of the story. Even as much as I ripped on it a few months ago on this podcast, there's a reason why the first one held up though as a classic still. And the reason why the first one holds up. This one, I'm not sure how well it'll hold up in 20 years, but it was a fun film, a decent sequel, awful remake, decent sequel, awful remake. It's my bare minimum for sequels is Pacific Rim 2. Which is it didn't ruin the first one for me. I can watch the first one without it feeling it's ruined. I hate many things about this movie, but I enjoyed parts of it. I enjoyed it enough where it doesn't ruin my perception of the first movie. So that's my bare minimum, and this far exceeded the Pacific Rim 2. It far exceeded the Pacific Rim 2 standard of sequels. So, it's worth if you love The Craft, if you love the first Craft, and you've somehow listened to all of our spoilers and me ripping on it, if you love the first one, watch this movie. It is definitely worth it. It's worth the $20 or whatever it is on streaming. It'll probably be cheaper to wait, which is what I expect most of my friends are doing. I expect most people I know are waiting for it to drop down to being a $7 rental, but it's worth it's worth it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it'll give you a nice break between Christmas rom-coms this time of year, of which the instant Halloween happened, Netflix recommended 3 at me in a day in emails.
Oh God!
And it's because it knows I love Christmas rom-coms, but I do not watch them until after Halloween.
Yes, damn it.
I don't put up Christmas decorations until after Thanksgiving.
See, that's because you have sense.
Thanksgiving's a holiday, man. I don't get to... Okay, so this episode is coming out to the public after Thanksgiving, but we're obviously... Patreon supporters get it before Thanksgiving, and we're recording this long before that, obviously, because that's how linear time works. But, I don't get to go to Thanksgiving this year because of a pandemic. I'm still going to celebrate Thanksgiving. My wife and I were having turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes. We're just doing it on our own. Because it's a holiday and you do the holiday.
Yes. Let the holidays have their time.
I'm a sucker. I like my I like my secular holidays and my religious holidays. And oh man, I should maybe one day do an episode on the Wheel of the Year. But let's run away from this episode because my God, this is long. So we've talked more about this movie than we ever did on Nerd and Time when we did movie specials back in the day, and that was a literal like pop culture podcast. All right, let's go to future me with the outros. Thank you, Bree, for being here. Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, you can always find me at Bree NicGarran on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find me at Bree Landwalker on Tumblr. And you can find me in Richmond, Virginia at the RVA Witches Unite Yule Market on December the 6th at Diversity Richmond from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., where you can also get your picture taken with Krampus. So do come down.
And you should check Bree's social media because we're recording this like a month ahead of time. And this time of year, and this year, who knows when events get moved or canceled. So definitely check the social media to make sure that that's still accurate.
Yes. And listen to Hex Positive.
Yes, you can always listen to Hex Positive here on the Nerd and Tie Network, the other Witchcraft podcast on a geeky podcast network, because, well, we figured out what you guys actually want to listen to after like the fifth show.
Healthy witches,
which you can find at nerdandtie.com/hex is the easy link to say out loud. And you can find all archives, and I'm on one of those episodes. So go listen to the Science Denial one because it involves
which is very popular, by the way.
Good.
People love that episode.
I'm very curmudgeonly in it. I was very salty that. All right, so now, take it away, future Trey. Thanks, past Trey. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of BS Free Witchcraft. As always, this show is brought to you by the generous contributions of my Patreon patrons, and you can find my Patreon at patreon.com/TRAEGORN. And the benefits of becoming a patron include early access to episodes like this, where they get it about several days, usually a week early. I've been a little late before, but you get this episode early, and you get to listen to it ahead of time. Also, a special shout out to those at my Witchy shout out tier, like Meg Tenhulzen, Bruce Norville, Lindsay Dosey, Mary Stowell, and Stephanie Graves. Thank you guys so much. And, I understand that, it's the world is a garbage fire. So if you can't afford to, contribute to the Patreon, I get it. But what you can do to help support the show is just share it with your friends. Just share the ever-living crap out of it. And you can also follow the show on social media. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/TRAEGORN. You can find me on Tumblr at TRAEGORN.tumblr.com. And you can follow the show on Facebook at facebook.com/BSFreeWitchcraft. And remember, BS Free Witchcraft is a part of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. We are a large, varied family of shows going anywhere from, actual play to true crime. And, I just gotta tell you, like, Cool and Unusual Punishment earlier this month put out the 10th episode of their Luganbild series. And I understand if you're not really into Eau Claire, Wisconsin local politics. It's a bit of a strange one, but let me tell you, this story is so weird that it's definitely it's definitely worth listening to these 10 episodes about a local politician who ran a charitable foundation who just disappeared one night without paying the bills. We know where he is. He's not missing. But the money kind of is. So it's an interesting web of lies, and you can find more at they have a dedicated website for that series, luganbild.com, but you can also find more at their website, coolandunusualpunishment.com, or you can find them on our website at nerdandtie.com/coolandunusualpunishment. Just go to nerdandtie.com. There's a bunch of shows there. It's neat. It's fun. It's for everyone. Or something. I don't always know how to do these outros. Thank you, Magicians, for listening to yet another episode. Oh, and we do have some new Magicians masks now in the Redbubble merch store, and you can find that at bsfreewitchcraft.com. And Yeah. That seems to be a good point to run away.